immigrationquestion.com, your go-to resource for U.S. immigration insights. We provide clear immigration news and information. Our platform provides a network of licensed attorneys who can answer your questions and guide you through the process. From visas to green cards, asylums to citizenships, immigrationquestion.com helps you to network with immigration attorneys so that you can move forward with confidence. Sign up today or download the app. Free registration, limited time offer. Stay tuned. We go live in 30 seconds.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the special edition webinar hosted by immigrationquestion.com, a networking platform and meeting ground where immigrants, families, advocates, and licensed immigration attorneys come together to better understand U.S. immigration policies as well as procedures. My name is Samia Murat, and I will be your host for today's important discussion, how the PERM Labor Certification process works in the year 2026. Many employers and foreign professionals pursuing employment-based permanent residency are required to undergo the PERM Labor Certification process. However, the PERM process is one of the most important as well as closely scrutinized stages of the immigration journey. It involves strict recruitment, wage, and compliance requirements that can significantly affect whether a green card case moves forward successfully. As adjudication standards and processing trends continue to change, both employers and foreign workers are paying close attention to documentation requirements, recruitment processes or procedures, and common issues that may lead to delays or audits. To help break this down, we are honored to be joined by Christina M. Kelley, an experienced immigration attorney who advises employers and foreign professionals on employment-based immigration matters, including PERM labor certification filings and compliance strategies. Attorney Kelley, thank you for joining us today. We are thrilled to have you for this important discussion.
Thanks so much for having me.
Before we begin, a quick reminder to our audience, immigrationquestion.com is a public educational and networking platform. The information shared today is for general information purposes only and does not constitute individualized legal advice. If you are joining us, whether it be on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or another platform, welcome. Please subscribe and share this session with anyone who may benefit from understanding the PERM labor certification process. Now, let's just dive straight into it. Attorney Kelley, can you explain what the PERM labor certification process entails?
Yes, so the PERM Labor Certification process is a way by which the U.S. government can ensure that an individual who's applying for a green card is not replacing a U.S. worker. So there's an entire structure there that allows for an individual to have an employer post advertisements to see if it's sort of a reverse recruitment to see if there's any qualified U.S. workers who may be able to fulfill that role. If not, then the individual is then able to proceed with their green card application.
Okay, and which employment-based categories require PERM labor certification, and what are some of the expectations?
Sure. So most people who are going to be pursuing a green card process, they do so through the PERM process, unless they qualify for some other path to a green card, such as a family-based petition. Some folks might qualify through their extraordinary ability. They've really reached the pinnacle of their career and they can apply for an EB-1 filing. An outstanding researcher, another category that wouldn't require a PERM. And then, looking at a national interest waiver, an individual qualifies for national interest waiver, or somebody who is a multinational manager would also not be required to file a PERM. Everybody else, they're all going to be required to do this labor certification process to ensure that there are no potentially qualified U.S. workers who can perform the duties of the job that they're using to apply for a green card. And then, in terms of what to expect from this process, it's a very long process. That's sort of the first thing to keep in mind. I know a lot of people are aware of that. Just some numbers to throw out there. You can very easily expect this process to take at least 2 years to complete from the start to when you finish with a certified PERM. I can give some more detailed estimates of what to expect with each step of the PERM process, but it is a very long process. It's something that you really need to know what you're doing going into it so you know what to expect.
Okay. And the latest developments in the PERM process in 2026, what are those about?
So there's kind of two things I'd really highlight there. The first thing is that, number one, the length of processing times, which we kind of already covered there. They just tend to be getting longer. I think with government shutdowns and things like that, we can expect that also to impact processing times. They can fluctuate and change over the very long amount of time where a PERM application is pending. So keep that in mind. It's not sort of one necessarily set time frame. It might fluctuate over time. That's the first thing. The second thing to keep in mind is that we can expect a very large increase in the prevailing wages that are going to be required of these PERM applications. And the reason why that's important is because the prevailing wages dictate what the minimum amount is that needs to be paid for a given role. It can be problematic if wages come back and they are too high for an individual, because then an individual might have to restart part of the process. So, generally speaking, the government has been seeking to increase those prevailing wages, which is blocking out a lot of individuals who otherwise might have wanted to apply for PERM. So it's going to be a big issue. This administration has been very keen on kind of reviewing and revising a lot of things, and that's one particular thing they're looking at revising that is potentially going to have a chilling effect on people's ability to be able to file for green cards in the long run.
Okay, and besides it being a very lengthy process, because I think that's a problem that a lot of people might face, what are some other issues that commonly arise in this process?
Sure. The thing that I see most often, and it's sort of a user error, so this is something that's good for our listeners to hear, mismatches of skills. So anytime you're beginning a PERM process, the attorney who's working on your case is going to ask you what skills you've attained. And what that's going to do is help the attorney to structure the PERM so that to make sure that the job requirements for the role that we're putting in place at the very beginning of the process match the experience and the skills that the individual has attained already prior to entering into the role that we're applying for. Sometimes what will happen is the individual will need to effectively rescind on whatever thing that they have confirmed in terms of skills or experience. And that ends up becoming a big problem later on, because if an individual doesn't have those skills, they can no longer use the PERM process for that role.
Okay. And how does the DOL evaluate the job requirements in the PERM Labor Certification process?
So what they want to see with an individual role is that it makes sense, right? They don't want to see that an individual role is going to be requiring things like a language requirement where it's clear that that's not required. They don't want to see that there's sort of things that you're putting in as requirements that really don't make sense given the role. They will poke back at that and say, hey, is it really required somebody speaks Hindi? Because it seems like you're just catering this role to individuals or to the individual who is applying. The other thing that that we can see here, certain types of equivalencies that are included in these requirements, like you might say somebody can qualify either with a bachelor's degree plus 5 years of experience or a master's degree plus 1 year of experience. Anything that you offer as an alternative requirement for the role has to match in terms of equivalency. There's something called a SVP level, and the SVP level has to be equivalent across whatever sets of requirements you have. It can't be, I require a high school degree and 1 year of experience or a master's degree and 1 year of experience. That will not fly for the government.
And what advice would you give to employers and foreign workers trying to successfully navigate this process in our current age?
I would say for any employers or individuals trying to navigate the process, start early. A lot of people think, okay, I've got 2 years, I can start, at the 4-year mark in my H-1B, and that's not really the case anymore. So many things can pop up during this process that are out of anybody's control. You can find a qualified U.S. worker. Wages can come back in a way that you really can't control because the process is so long and these changes happen without our input. So really, the earlier you can get started, the better. The other thing to consider with this is, it's really important that you be honest with your immigration attorney. Sometimes there are, situations where people might overinflate their skills or experience. That's just going to hurt you in the long run. So be open to starting early and be honest with it at the outset.
Well, thank you for those insights. Everyone watching, this discussion about the PERM Labor Certification process is not meant to create fear about employment-based immigration, but it's a way to provide clarity on compliance requirements and the practical realities employers and foreign workers may face. Careful preparation, proper documentation, understanding the process can help avoid delays and complications. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. ImmigrationQuestion.com is a networking platform where users can ask immigration-related questions at no cost and engage with participating attorneys. We're also proud to share that ImmigrationQuestion.com is BBB accredited as well as ISO certified, reflecting our commitment to transparency, accountability, community education, and security. Attorney Kelley, based on your experience, how does ImmigrationQuestion.com help immigrants and immigration attorneys like yourself?
I think it's great that individuals can empower themselves by gaining knowledge, throughout the entire process. I think one of the things that I strive for as an immigration attorney with my clients is to know that they know what's happening throughout the process. I think that helps to alleviate a lot of the stress. The other thing I think that's great about it is there's a sense of power that comes with knowing what the process looks like. So, it's not going to throw you off if there is a hiccup in the process because that's a possibility at the onset and we can work around it, or, that the attorney will work with you to help you fix whatever issues arise. So it's great that people are getting educated about this process.
Beautiful. Question. What employers or foreign workers have about the PERM labor certification process that you believe should be clarified early on in the process?
Well, I think there's so many. It's hard to limit it to one. I think one common misconception is that if you have a rule, that it's going to just go smoothly all the way through, and that
Right.
we can really count on relying on the process. There's so many ways in which a PERM process can get derailed, again, through no fault of anyone's, no fault of the employees, no fault of the attorneys, no fault of the companies. The prime example is if you find a qualified U.S. worker, it's going to derail things every time. I think something to be aware of going in is just to be flexible. Sometimes you kind of have to, what you'd say in football, call an audible, right? You just sort of have to go with whatever you're given in terms of the process, and just be flexible with that. Also, there might be some creative ways to apply for a PERM. We use concepts such as future offers. So maybe you're not currently in a role, but you're going to be offered a role in 2 years. That's a great opportunity to talk with an attorney about doing some sort of strategy around that if perhaps your current role is not conducive to a PERM. So different things to think about, and also just sometimes you can't proceed with a PERM because there's some sort of issue. Maybe you're newly graduated from college and there's really a high likelihood of denial. It's not the attorney trying to cut you off from a green card. It's really just perhaps the timing isn't right, and you might want to amass some more experience. If you're going into a PERM with just a degree, you will find that a lot of people also have degrees like you do. So if that's the only requirement for a role, there's a really high likelihood you're going to get somebody who's qualified for that role showing up with the PERM process and derailing everything. So just flexibility, great thing to take going into this whole process.
Okay. If you're just joining us, we're speaking with attorney Christina M. Kelley on how the PERM labor certification process works in 2026. We are now moving into our live Q&A session. This is your opportunity as a viewer to ask general questions and hear educational insights from a licensed immigration attorney. Please drop your questions in the chat or you can call us live at 516-703-3483, and we will take as many questions as the time allows. Okay, so our first question is the PERM process taking longer now in 2026? I know that you mentioned due to the government and the Trump administration that it is taking longer. So if you could just expand on that, please.
Sure, yes, it is, and I apologize if you can hear anything in the background. So it is taking longer. If you could give me 1 second, apologies. Apologies, like most people, I'm balancing childcare with everything else. What I would say is that, in 2026, it is taking, a good deal longer, I think, than it has in the past. We're seeing lots of shortages with, lots of shortages with government staffing, lots of shortages with all sorts of other, issues with this administration that we haven't seen before. So it has been difficult. It has been a longer process, I think, than in prior years.
Okay. Question number 2, can my employer start PERM while I am on a temporary work visa?
Yes, this is a common question. It's a good one. Your temporary work visa and your PERM is not going to be an indication that you are going to remain permanently in the United States yet, right? It's just an indication that your employer is seeking to employ you in a more permanent role, and that they have that role available for you. Later on, there's still going to be an I-140 that needs to be filed and an I-485 that needs to be filed to complete this whole green card process. It's a 3-step process. So at this juncture, your employer could start the PERM for you while you are in a temporary work visa, and that is okay.
Okay. Question 3, can small businesses also sponsor workers through PERM, or is it only large companies?
Another great question. It's anybody. You can have a company that has, 5 people, a company that has 50 million people. It really doesn't matter one way or the other. The whole point of the PERM process is to just check the labor market. So it can be anybody checking the labor market at all.
Okay. Which documents would you say employers keep in case of a PERM audit?
So attorneys have a set list of documentation that needs to be kept in case of a PERM audit. You want to make sure that the documentation includes all of the recruitment methods used. So typically that will be, a newspaper, 2 Sunday ads in a newspaper. You're going to be looking at posting typically for an online job site. The employer needs to post either on their website or post, physically in person on a site. There's several different things that need to be done, and the timing of it needs to match with what the requirements are. So you want to make sure all of that is very clearly documented. You want to document all the resumes that the employer receives, all of the, so every resume, every disqualification reason. That what the audit is going to do is it's basically going to check your homework, right? It's going to go through and make sure that you did everything you were supposed to further the PERM application, and that you disqualified applications in a proper way. You can't say, I didn't like the way that this person did this particular skill. It's really, does this person meet the absolute bare minimum qualifications that we outlined on the PERM? And if that's the case, even if it's not somebody you wouldn't, normally hire because their personality was not a good fit or something along those lines, it's a legal fictional world that they've created to say, if you meet the minimum requirements, you're going to qualify for this if you're a U.S. worker. So it's, definitely keep everything regarding the recruitment Make sure that you keep everything regarding the reasons for disqualification. There's a recruitment report the employer should also sign. And then in case of an audit, you'll be all set.
Okay. What are some rather common mistakes that employers make in these PERM applications?
Ooh, I think, like I said, the skills is a big one that I see, and it's less employers, I think, than employees, verifying that certain skills are required and then the employee doesn't have those skills at the end of the day can be a huge reason to derail a PERM application. I think, employers can also post things incorrectly. Things have to be posted in a certain way for a certain amount of time. And some employers, if they don't post for the requisite amount of time, that's going to be a big problem later on. Something that I've noticed that's a very small detail that often gets overlooked, if you have holidays, company holidays, or national holidays, that's not going to count as a posting day for some of the required postings. So some people will post, for the requisite 10 days, but there's weekends and holidays to consider as well. So that's just something to keep in mind there that I see pop up from time to time.
Recent reports indicate that the DHS has ordered furloughed employees back to work amid ongoing government shutdown. Now, Attorney Kelley, when immigrants and employers hear about this DHS employers being called back to work during a shutdown, many may wonder where immigration cases will continue moving forward, or if disruptions will likely continue. How should individuals interpret these developments? And what do you think are some practical steps they can take to stay proactive while government operations remain uncertain?
Yeah, I do think that anytime that you have individuals who are being furloughed, that's going to be problematic, right? There's what news is telling us right now is that they're assuring some of these individuals back pay for when they were not paid previously, and they're basically forcing a lot of these individuals back to work, telling them that they are going to be paid using emergency funds, and then kind of going from there. Where that's problematic is those funds are not going to last forever, first of all. And second of all, if you were forced to go back to work when you were told that you didn't have to, you'd be a little bit upset as well. So, we rely on these individuals to process our applications, to make sure that applications are running smoothly. It's going to be very, very problematic if we can't get continued secure funding for these individuals to maintain a workforce that's going to be processing these applications. And I think if this continues on the path it has been, and we don't have workers working at kind of full capacity, we're going to see a very large increase in processing times across the board.
Okay. Thank you to everyone who joined us today for this special webinar. And thank you, Attorney Kelley, for sharing your knowledge as well as your practical guidance. You can always visit immigrationquestion.com to ask immigration-related questions, stay informed about policy updates, and register for upcoming live events. If you missed any part of today's discussion, the replay will be on Spotify soon. Just search Borderless Talk by immigrationquestion.com. We look forward to seeing you on Friday at our next live session. Stay informed, stay prepared, and stay connected. Thank you.